Body modification is not a new concept. Mankind has been decorating their bodies around the world for centuries. The tattoo industry and its consumers make up a culture of its own, and as this culture grows, so does the need for safety and its awareness. After watching this video, you should be able to confidently identify proper procedures and equipment required to complete the tattoo process safely. Before working in a blood-borne pathogen-related industry, it is suggested that you receive hepatitis B vaccinations. Hepatitis B vaccinations are a safe synthetic form of vaccine that, when administered in a 3-stage dose, will help you build up an immunity. The exposure control plan is written with the intention of minimizing or eliminating occupational exposure to blood-borne pathogens. It's also intended for the safe handling of blood and bodily fluids and the items that have been contaminated with otherwise potentially infectious materials. You can maintain a safe work environment by logging material safety data sheets in a hazard communication program stored in a binder in a designated location. The written hazard communication program outlines the steps to take so that hazards associated in the tattooing, decontamination, and disinfection process are clearly communicated. Material safety data sheets contain safety and vital information about the products you are using. The manufacturer should provide them. Occupational exposure can come from contact with mucous membranes or non-intact skin. If needle stick occurs, remain calm, stop what you are doing, and wash vigorously as soon as possible. Attempt to save any contaminated object for testing purposes in a leak-proof, puncture-resistant container. Report incident to employer promptly. Seek medical help or treatment. Ask about hepatitis B immune globulin. This treatment can be administered after you have been exposed. Tear down, disinfect, and re-prep station before finishing a tattoo. Engineering controls are structural or mechanical devices that are used to eliminate or isolate contamination. Examples of this would be hand washing facilities, autoclave sterilizers, sharps containers, lidded trash cans, and a wall-mounted glove rack. If an engineering control will help reduce exposure, it should be used. Work practice controls are behaviors that are required of the artist in order to use engineering controls effectively. Examples of this would be proper hand washing, disposing of used needles in sharps containers, observing biohazard warning labels, and throwing away all disposable items. When safe practices are not enough to keep the artist safe, personal protective equipment should be used. This is any equipment that is to be worn while performing a task in order to minimize the user's exposure to contaminated materials. Gloves, aprons, and face shields are examples of personal protective equipment. Standard precautions as outlined for blood-borne pathogen state: blood and all bodily fluids are to be treated as if contaminated with HIV, HBV, HCV, and any other blood-borne pathogens. These 4 preventative measure strategies will help minimize the likelihood of exposure to blood-borne pathogens. Sterilization is the process of eliminating all microbial life, including endospores. There are several forms of sterilization: gamma radiation, liquid chemical, gas plasma, dry heat, and autoclave. Autoclave sterilization is the most common form of sterilization used in the tattoo industry. Implements used during the tattoo process are only sterile until they are opened. Once removed from their bioshielding, they are no longer sterile. The rest of the supplies for station preparation are to be new and clean, coming out of a clean storage area. This is known as aseptic procedure. Asepsis is defined as the absence of or freedom from microorganisms that cause disease. There are 2 types of aseptic technique: Medical asepsis is the procedure used to reduce the number of microorganisms and their spread. Hand washing and disinfection are examples of medical asepsis. Surgical asepsis is the procedure used to eliminate the presence of microorganisms and the procedure used to prevent the introduction of microorganisms to an area. Sterilization of tools is an example of surgical asepsis. There are 4 basic principles of asepsis: knowing what is clean, knowing what is dirty, knowing what is sterile, and keeping these 3 conditions separate and eliminating contamination immediately. It's much safer to transport tools from the workstation to the biohazard room in a dry tool bin. If local law or regulation requires that tools be soaked in an enzymatic solution, use a second dirty tool bin in the biohazard room for soaking. Decontaminate your equipment from gross debris by using ultrasonic cavitation for at least 15 to 20 minutes. Tubes should be scrubbed, re-ran, rinsed, then placed into sterilization pouches for autoclaving. You should wrap, seal, date, and log all materials suited for the sterilization process. Sterile pouches expire depending on how they are stored. Local laws may vary on how long items are considered sterile. A dark, dry storage container is best. Tools should never be put away damp or wet. The autoclave will completely eliminate all microbial life, including endospores, by using superheated steam under pressure. Documentation is entering into a log all items that are to be sterilized, then placing all sterilized equipment into a closed container, specifically used for sterilized items only. This is known as a clean storage area. Handle sterile pouches with gloved hands. Watch for tears in bioshielding. Keep pouches away from moisture and only place pouches on appropriate fields to avoid compromising sterility. Weekly spore testing does not help with having a clean work environment. Blood-borne pathogens training, routine disinfection, and proper handling of contaminated materials help maintain a clean work environment. Your autoclave should be spore tested at minimum once a month. Depending on usage, bi-weekly or more frequent spore testing might be necessary. The biohazard room is a designated area where all sterilization equipment and supplies for sterilization are stored. This room should be completely self-contained and labeled for safety with a biohazard label and a box of clean gloves located outside the door. The biohazard room should be disinfected on a regular basis. Double swing hinges for hands-free access to the room is recommended. It is imperative for every tattoo shop to have a biohazard room. While in this room, you should always apply the use of personal protective equipment designed for the task you are completing, such as gloves, apron, and eye protection. Your bioroom should contain the following items: ultrasonic cavitational washout tank, tube scrubbing equipment, wash basin, hot and cold running water, autoclave, pouches and storage for pouches, and a fan vented to outside air. By putting this equipment in the bioroom, you are controlling the area that is to be contaminated. You are also keeping all potential dangers involved with contaminated equipment safely away from your clients and the general public. Nothing ever goes into the bioroom that does not get thrown away or autoclaved. It is necessary to know how to properly use each piece of equipment in the bioroom. Let's take a closer look at the proper procedures and safety issues associated with this equipment. The ultrasonic washout tank is a device that is used in conjunction with a detergent to free debris from metal instruments, such as tubes and grips. Ultrasonic washout tanks should never be at or around your workstation. The tanks are more effective when they have a heater. Hot water in conjunction with a clinical detergent for equipment cleaning is recommended. This helps to break up stubborn bodily fluids and dried blood. Ultrasonic washout tanks produce microbial spray that when running has a 2-foot spray radius with the lid on, 4-foot with the lid off. It is recommended that you leave the room when the tank is running. Never put your hand into a running ultrasonic tank, even with the thick glove on. The power of the cavitation will push the contaminated solution right into your skin. After ultrasonic cavitation, a properly fitted bristle is used to remove the remaining debris from inside the tip and the tube, as well as the grip if necessary. This is referred to as tube scrubbing. Precautions must be taken when scrubbing tubes in a wash basin. Tube scrubbing will cause contamination to splash outside the sink and potentially come into contact with a mucous membrane, such as the eye, nose, or mouth. To prevent contamination from spraying off the bristles, scrub tubes under at least 2 inches of water. Eyes, nose, and mouth protection is a must. Autoclaves vary in their age, make, and model. Be aware of the operating parameters of the make and model you are using. The autoclave cycle for the tattooing and piercing community calls for 284 degrees at 2 atmospheres of pressure or 30 psi for 15 to 40 minutes. This will kill all endospores, including hard shell viruses, such as hepatitis, and all microbial life. You should never use a pressure cooker for sterilization. Pressure cookers do not reach a sufficient temperature to kill hepatitis and can be hard to monitor unless you watch them constantly. When opening the autoclave, you always want to use a new glove to extract the contents of the load. If you use the same glove you opened it with, you'll be cross-contaminating the contents by touching the outside of the clave. Remember, never set the load down in the bioroom. The only thing in the bioroom that is sterile is the contents of the autoclave and the inside of the chamber immediately after a fresh load has been ran. Maintaining the integrity and cleanliness of your sterile equipment is very easy to do when working with clean storage areas. These are designated areas where clean and sterile supplies are to be stored. Never compromise your clean storage area by touching the area with contaminated hands or gloves. Clean storage in conjunction with log keeping for autoclave loads, which include dates and initials on every pouch, will allow you to track the contents in case of autoclave malfunction. Unused tools should be repackaged and autoclaved within 30 days. Using a pass-fail indicator at different locations on the tray between loads will help ensure that the entire chamber is getting the same degree of sterilization. Proper station preparation is imperative to creating a safe work environment. Your workstation should contain a wall-mounted glove holder and a sharps disposable unit clearly labeled Biohazard. The contents of all bottles in your station should also be labeled clearly. Your station should contain a stainless steel or heavy plastic container to hold contaminated tubes until the end of your shift. This container should have a biohazard sticker and should not contain liquid. Local laws may vary from state to state. It is required that you work off a separate pallet or station rather than a countertop that is used for storing clean supplies. These stations are usually mobile, allowing them to be completely covered with barrier film, opposed to just part of the countertop being covered. The first step in station preparation is to wash your hands. Proper hand washing technique is one of the best precautions you can take to prevent the spread of disease. Always wash your hands whenever there's a chance that your hands have been contaminated or whenever you're at risk of transmitting infections to yourself or others. You should always wash your hands after completing the following tasks: immediately when you arrive at work, before putting gloves on for any reason, after touching any instrument or object that may have been contaminated, after touching a mucous membrane such as the eyes, nose, or mouth, before and after eating or smoking, after removing any kind of glove, after using the restroom for any other reason than hand washing, and before leaving work. You should always wear gloves when handling clean or potentially contaminated items. Gloves in conjunction with ointment can cause latex to break down. Changing gloves frequently will help prevent this matter. There are two kinds of hand washing, and both are appropriate for different situations. Before hand washing, remove all rings and bracelets until the end of your shift. Hand washing with plain soap and running water removes transient microorganisms and soils like dirt and crumbs from food. Hand washing with plain soap and water for 30 seconds and rinsing in running water is sufficient. If hands are heavily soiled with dirt, blood, or other organic material, in case of glove tear, hand washing for several minutes might be necessary. Hand washing with antimicrobial soap and running water removes transient organisms and soil, which kills or inhibits the growth of resident microorganisms. This type of hand washing is a suggested procedure for tattooists and piercers. First, be sure to have a paper towel easily accessible so you do not have to touch a dispenser when finished washing. With a disposable manicure stick, clean around and under fingernails. Remember, there are 4 sides to every finger. Next, rinse without touching the sink. Use a paper towel to dry hands, and then turn the sink off with the paper towel. If the door is closed, use a paper towel to open the door before discarding it in the trash. If you're not hand washing properly, you can cross-contaminate your hands or spread contamination on your body before ever leaving the bathroom. Do not touch any environmental surfaces between hand washing and donning a fresh pair of gloves. Remember, 10 to 12 gloves per 100 can have a pinhole or tear in them. The next step in station preparation is to clean all equipment that has to be touched in the tattoo process. This should be done with an EPA-approved tuberculocidal disinfectant spray. There are several industrial-strength countertop disinfectants on the market today. Choose the EPA-approved product that's best for you. Be careful not to breathe overspray, as some chemical cleaners can be caustic when sprayed from a mist bottle. And be sure to adhere to the recommended soap time for whatever broad-spectrum microbial germicidal disinfectant you are using. After applying a fresh pair of gloves, cover with barrier film. Place a fresh lab cloth on top of the film and apply tape. That makes a total of 3 layers of protection. You'll need to acquire the rest of the supplies from clean storage. A second pair of gloves is recommended after getting into clean pigments. Single-use disposable is the key. Use ointment to stick ink caps to the station. If not using ointment, make sure ink cap holders are disposable or autoclavable. Because breaks in the skin happen every time someone shaves, you'll need to use barrier protection on anything you touch from the time you shave the client. This will help to avoid the spread of potentially infectious microorganisms. Ink caps and gloves can be utilized for barrier protection. With a little modification, you can use large ink caps to cover the knob on your adjustable power supply. Another method you can try is cutting off the finger or thumb off a latex glove to cover the power supply knob. Nightclave autoclavable squirt bottles are recommended in place of mist bottles to minimize overspray. The entire bottle should be covered with a plastic bag, except for the spout. You should cover at least 12 inches of the power cord with tube sleeve or syringe sleeve. Use tape to securely attach the sleeve to the cord. You can then tuck the sleeve into the back of the machine to ensure that it stays in place. The whole idea behind barrier protection is to keep the otherwise potentially infectious materials off these areas while still cleaning them before and after each use. Cross-contamination prevention while tattooing is very simple. Once blood-borne pathogens are present, you must unglove, wash, then reglove before touching a clean storage area or any other area except for those already contaminated. You can never be too clean. After finishing and bandaging the tattoo, you'll need to wash and re-glove before breaking down the station. OSHA standards state that you must wash after removing gloves for any reason. To help prevent cross-contamination, you should have on a fresh pair of gloves. We will choose one of these gloves to be the contaminated glove. We've chosen the right one, the left one being the cleaner glove. Starting with the left hand, grab your washout bottle by the spout. Remove the bag with the other hand. Start with the washout bottle to ensure that you're not cross-contaminating the solution. Repeat this process with your tattoo machines. And station teardown, you only have two fields, clean and dirty. By paying attention to these fields and keeping them separated, you can reduce the risk of cross-contaminating your clean supplies. Being careful not to move towards yourself, take the needle bar from the machine and place it in the sharps container. Place tubes in the stainless steel container until the end of the day or your work shift. Do not transport contaminated tubes across the shop. Next, replace the razor cap with the one-handed technique and discard into sharps container. Remove barrier shielding from power supply and place it on the station with the rest of the barrier protection. The next step is to carefully dispose of water cups. Then remove the rest of the barrier shielding. The last step is to roll barrier film on station inward to contain the ink caps. Continue to roll until a glove can be removed and placed around the film. Discard all barrier film and gloves at the same time. After washing and applying a new pair of gloves, get your spray disinfectant and paper towel and spray down the top of the station. The armrest and chair also need to be sprayed. Spray your towel until it is damp and, starting with the machines, wipe thoroughly. Wipe down the chair and armrest, being thorough not to forget areas such as the foot and headrest, as well as the adjustment handles. Wipe cook cord at least 3 feet up. Remove gloves and wash immediately using proper hand washing technique.
Tattooing has gone through a lot of changes throughout the years. 15 years ago, they didn't even wear rubber gloves when they tattooed. Blood diseases have also changed over time, and the need for awareness grows every day. If you're looking to get a tattoo, you can bet that if the artist has integrity and training for what he or she does, then they will more than likely have integrity for the tattoos that they do, and will be displaying their certification for training proudly. As a tattoo artist without this training, you could ruin any reputation you have before you've had a chance to build one, or really hurt someone. Microbiology training is a yearly thing. If new diseases or treatment for the diseases become available, as a tattooist you need to be aware of them for your safety and the safety of your clients. There are OSHA approved outreach teachers in your area. Contact OSHA for more information.